we need to get our voices out there. We need to be on an equal platform, an equal representation on international stage. But before we get to do that, we have to be able to solidify the foundation, and the foundation is the national stage. When there isn't a unity, there isn't progress, there isn't a development for all people on the national stage, there is no way that we're going to make it to the international stage, right? So that was kind of like my personal mission, to go into that field. For years, even decades, right? Since independence, we are founded upon a colonialist system. So if we want to change, if we want to fundamentally change that system, it's not going to happen overnight, but we can start somewhere so that the person that comes after us, the generation that comes after us, has it a little bit easier because we started it, right?
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Mpomontu, and our goal and mission with this show is to introduce you to stories of young people across the globe who we believe are the next generation of thought leaders in their respective fields. Additionally, we aim to share with you ideas and concepts that you can implement to elevate both your business and personal life. Right, this episode's guest is formerly known as Deepshikha Parmessur, who is the co-founder and COO of her latest startup, Minority Africa, which is indeed a digital publication providing solutions content to African minority communities and persons using data that is immersive and mobile journalism. The startup is furthermore built on a mission to counter misrepresentation and underrepresentation and no representation at all of African minority groups and individuals in mainstream media through a multimedia approach that is data-driven and interactive. She is a graduate of the esteemed African Leadership Academy and went on to study at Bucknell University, where she secured her degree in international relations with a concentration on culture and identity in Africa. And to be honest, she really just sounds like a global citizen to me. Because in the meantime, whilst pursuing her studies, she interned at the Africa Progress Panel, chaired by the late Kofi Annan, a milestone in her political trajectory that indeed serve as a building block that will catapult her contributions to the Mauritian political arena. Additionally, in 2019, she was mentioned the first female Prime Minister in the Mauritian National Youth Parliament. On that note, think of the upcoming Graça Machel, or perhaps Winnie Madikizela Mandela, or even our very own Ngozi Okonjo. Think of Deepshikha and the work that she's doing. On that note, without any further ado, Deepshikha, thank you so much for joining us here at the Leaders Podcast.
Thank you. I mean, I'm very excited, and thank you for this rather lengthy introduction. I am very thankful to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I think, Deepshikha, as a person who has been an ALA alum, when you walk through ALA corridors, you do hear some certain names that resonate. When your article came out in 2019, I was still a student at the African Leadership Academy and not particularly interested in governance. But when I came across your article, I was really stunned by the work that you were doing. I think at the time you had just been named, the first female Prime Minister in the National Youth Parliament back home. And I felt like really in one way or the other, we do not notice how, as human beings, we are standing or walking down paths that individuals like yourself have walked past. You know what I'm saying? That it adds so much meaning to understand. And when I look at you, to be like, here's a young person who's done so well for herself, but really went through a similar trajectory that I went through. So I think it's quite an honor for me, to some extent, an out-of-body experience, to be having a conversation with you. And I guess to start us off, I'm just curious about where you are in the world, since the pandemic, also what you've been up to. And I've been navigating these trying times.
Yeah, so I am currently in Mauritius right now. That's where I was born and raised. And so right after graduation, so I graduated in 2019, I always knew that I wanted to come back in Mauritius to work for my country. I didn't know exactly when that was going to happen. But right after, graduating in 2019, I felt like I was away for about 7 years, and I was like, I want to get myself involved in the political and social field in Mauritius, but I've been away for so long that I almost felt disconnected with the reality here. So I made up my mind right after graduation. I moved back here to be more involved and, as we say, like on the ground with everything that's happening. Because, I really wanted to be a part of the community that hopefully I will work with, And so it hasn't been easy, being away and then coming back home with all of the changes, the personal changes that you've gone through. But I am very grateful. And so right now, as you mentioned, I am working with Minority Africa, an organization that I co-founded with two other incredible people. I'm also on the board for the AL for Governance network. And so this is something that I'm doing, but I also have a full-time job at a company, a French-based company in Mauritius right now. So it's been interesting because, last year when COVID hit in Mauritius, so we were at a peak in March of last year, and there was so much uncertainty happening around that. And at the time, I was working in a diplomatic organization. So I was doing research on the blue economy. I was a research assistant. So I was really looking at the environment and climate change. And then when COVID happened, this famous saying, last one in, first one out. And so come June, I think end of June, I lost my job working at the diplomatic organization because there was some reshuffling because of the pandemic. And so I thought to myself, so what am I going to do now, And so I really hit the ground with the village council elections that was going to happen in November last year in 2020. So really, it's been like a bunch of different things that I have been involved with, because I feel like, when you working in the political and social field, there is no one clear path that you should take going into, right? So I really wanted to expand and reach out to as many community as I can. And so that's what I've been doing in the meantime. And so right now, we are experiencing our second wave in Mauritius, and we're currently on lockdown. So it's kind of like back to exactly last year, but we're trying to reinvent the ways of how we can, work together better, because when that hit last year, it was more of like a known territory, but we've been through that again. So we're trying to navigate the whole situation. And I mean, it's in Mauritius, it's particularly hard right now just because we have so many issues with the government and what the people need, that it's just been a mess, if I have to be honest with you, So it's really trying to navigate that.
Mm-hmm. And Deepshikha, I look at at your response with COVID, and then I remember, I think later on, while I was actually researching and preparing for your interview, I came across about the fact that at the height of COVID, when it started, you started this vegan outlet, because on the, to try and make vegan or food, like vegan food, more accessible in the island, which I think we'll delve about later on. But I look at you right now, and I look at the woman you're becoming, and I look at the person you've become, and not only am I inspired, but I also ask myself to kind of go back down memory lane. When you look at your Deepshikha before ALA, right? What series of events in your early years of your life, led you to have a desire to want to have the impact that you're having right now? Which individuals or specific events, when you look back in your teenage years, made you decide that I want to be the change I want to see in Mauritius?
Wow, you're really taking me back right now. But I mean, you know what? I'm actually reading a book right now called, I don't know if you've heard it, it's called Atomic Habits by James Clear, right? And so that kind of like resonates with the question, it's like you're developing like small and easy habits, and they're really small steps that lead to, that bigger moment or the bigger picture, right? And so I feel like when I I started this journey, it wasn't about, I want to be in the news one day because of that. For me, it was about learning about the people around me. And so growing up, when I was a kid, because of my father's profession, I had the privilege to travel for holidays with families, right? And so when I started going outside of Mauritius, really that small island, and we're really small, that sparked the curiosity in me in thinking that there is a lot more out there in the world that I have yet to experience and I have yet to learn from. And so that really was the first moment where it clicked in my head that there is a lot more for me to see. And so, when I was in school in Mauritius, I wasn't even like the brightest students, however you want to define that. I wasn't in the top 10 students. I was just, doing okay. I didn't like school all that much, to be honest. But what I really liked was the extracurricular activities, right? So we had the student council in my school, and I love talking to people. I love just being around people. So I tried running for student council. And so for the first 2 years, I was the secretary. And then the year after that, I was elected vice president. And that was the start of that leadership journey, if I can call it, really. And then I was also interested in Model UN and the Model MAU. And so I worked really hard to get that, just because I wanted to know what it was all about. Yeah. And after attending that, I said to myself, wow, so there is an actual UN and an actual AU out there in the world that has so much power and the opportunity to do so much for the world, but I didn't feel like we were utilizing that as much. And especially for Mauritius, we are a small island, but we are very, very vulnerable when it comes to climate change. We are not very protected. And so one wrong thing could just top it all over and it's just going to go down the drain, right? But I also looked at the real UN and the power that Mauritius had to represent on that big platform. And it was almost kind of lost, And after my experience with the Model UN, I thought to myself, we need to get our voices out there. We need to be on an equal platform, an equal representation on international stage. But before we get to do that, we have to be able to solidify the foundation. And the foundation is the national stage. When there is no unity, there isn't progress, there isn't a development for all people on the national stage, there is no way that we're going to make it to the international stage, right? So that was kind of like my personal mission to go into that field. But again, I was 15 years old. What did I know about the world? It was just very small. Yeah. And so when ALA came into my radar, I was like, that sounds like a great opportunity because, I feel like everything that I have worked for when I was in school in Mauritius had led me to apply to ALA. Yeah. And then, it just happened like that. It took off, I think. Yeah.
As many of you know, the podcast is all about documenting and curating stories of active change makers we believe are the next generation of thought leaders in their respective fields. Which is why I'm excited to tell you about our friends at Function Photography and Brand Development Services. They are a for-profit that exists to serve and create meaningful experiences for brands with a cause and individuals with a sense of purpose. They've worked alongside some of the biggest brand and media personalities, including but not limited to members such as Tabzi and the famous Candice Mudisel. Therefore, my friends, if you're looking for an affordable photography, videography, or brand development services, make sure that you check out our friends at Function Photography and Brand Development Services. Make sure to click the link below for more information. Thank you. Yeah, which really speaks, I think firstly, one thing why I find your answer so immaculate is that this idea of how much exposure can do to one's trajectory, right? So you started off by answering how the most simplest things on holidays, you getting to experience life outside of Mauritius, to have a different taste of what life on the other side looks like. Often the key question is often that access to that privilege or being privileged. The key question is that how do we use that privilege to benefit those who don't have the privilege? So I think I listened to your answer and thinking about you really seem like someone who's really thought around at what point does my life become more than just about me at Deepshikha. So at a very young age, you're going on very nice holidays, experiencing different ethnicities and ethnic communities, but also you thinking about, as you seeing this, that perhaps I want this for my people back home, that yes, I'm here, but I also understand that a huge part of me is to serve the people back home. So I think on that note, talk to me about ALA. Right. So I know ALA is one space that has had a huge influence on each and every student's trajectory. Myself, I've seen it, hasn't been a student of it. But talk to me about, as a result of you being at ALA, when you look back now that you're in your 20s, look back in hindsight at your experience at ALA, at the various individuals that made you who you are in one way or the other. How would you say the academy has helped you into shaping you, or the people at the academy rather, shaped you into being the woman that you are today?
I think that being at ALA was more of a personal journey for me. Academically speaking, I don't know why, but going into ALA, I knew once I was done, I was going to go to college to study international relations. Yeah. So academically, I was set. Like there was no change in my mind. But I think ALA was more of a personal journey. I mean, even in the first year, I had to dig deep, and I mean really deep, and ask questions about identity, because here in Mauritius, we say this thing that I don't personally like is we call ourselves Little India. Because, because of our history of colonialism and everything, we don't have what we call like the native Mauritian, because it was just a piece of land, right? And so everyone who's here came from different parts of the world. And the majority of us are from India. My great-great-great-grandparents are from India, right? So there is that heritage. But we are recognized as being African, right? And so we grow up with this idea that, oh, I'm Indian, I'm from Mauritius, I'm Indian. And so it really hit me when I got into ALA, and ALA is for African, right? I was like, wait a minute. So I've been lied to for 15 years of my life. I'm not exactly Indian. What's happening? Yeah. And so that was like a big question, like trying to unlearn about your own identity and the group of people that you associate with, but also, your mission in life. And I used to be a dancer. I love dancing, and then I had to stop because of an injury, right? So when I was in ALA, dancing informed a lot of me as a person. It was a creative outlet for me to sort of like dig deep into my own identity and trying to understand all of that. And I think ALA gave me that platform. I was in a group of amazing women and we were dancing, and that was my time to reconnect with myself. And through that, I really came to terms with, I'm not here just for myself. What I realized after graduating ALA is that it was a privilege to be there, and that privilege has to go somewhere. Yeah. I just can't let it die with me, because I know other Mauritians who are wanting that same experience. And so really my mission was, how do I use my privilege and extend that to other young women in Mauritius who possibly did not have that chance? And I think ALA gave me the tool to be able to use those and, pay it forward to the younger people that came after me, So, it's hard to really, put words into how ALA shaped me. Because, it's not an experience that you can, put adjectives to. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just something that you feel. Only when you get out, of course, because when you're in, the prep times, the early morning, the Saturday classes, you don't feel it. But it all builds up to someone who you hope that is going to help you move forward in life. And so, after I graduated ALA, I kept in touch with people. whether it was teachers or students. And so what I was doing on like a personal level is I was trying to reach out to other young Mauritians who would potentially be interested in applying. And I was helping them, sharing my experience and then helping them with their application and everything. So I just didn't want my journey to be a personal one. I wanted to share it with other people who might not have that privilege. So I think ALA definitely made me question big things, but it also put a map, it put a pin on what I'm supposed to do for the future.
Which really speaks core and speaks true to while you're talking, a quote by Achaleke came to mind, and what I believe is what he says is his leading question, and he often says that, would it matter to Africa that you existed? Right. And then I think about what you are in the space at ALA, you're going through this, what we all go through, identity crisis, because I think also even the caliber of individuals at ALA who happen to be often so articulate that you often feel like you leave high school being at the top of your class, you walk into ALA, you understand it's a different ball game, right? Because everybody has different models of education, different ethnicities. But to really understand that truly, to what extent would it matter to Africa or to Mauritius that you existed, and then really while also listening to you, one thing that really came about is this concept of Ubuntu, this I am because we are. Right. The importance of community, the importance of recognizing those shoulders that have paid forward for you to have access to spaces like ALA, and in turn, how it is your duty to give back, which I think is quite of one thing that as an alum at ALA, that's how I was purely be able to connect with you. You know what I'm saying? The idea that this deliberate intent to building a community, to building a network of individuals who really are pushing each other to shift their needle in their respective industries, be it in politics, entrepreneurship. So I really do resonate with your answer. When I look back, even as an alum, there are certain teachers at ALA that would be hard on me that I wouldn't like. Right? That does not feel nice. But now in hindsight, you are thankful for those individuals, for how they patience and how they continuous, grind and pushing you to be a better person. I think really resonate with that answer.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that I am very grateful to ALA is for constantly making me uncomfortable. Always, as you said, always pushing the needle, just putting yourself out there and asking the questions. And sometimes the questions didn't even make sense, but just being in that space, surrounded with other young people who are also uncomfortable in their own journey, but really that ultimately leads you to getting closer to who you're supposed to be, right? And be it the teachers or the people who serve you in the dining hall, right? I've had some of the most interesting conversations with them, but it's just those tiny little moments that add up to the whole experience that you just can't help but be thankful for,
Yeah. And when I look at your trajectory, post ALA as you're at Bucknell, one thing that in previous interviews or in previous articles written about you, one that always stood out is this moment when you were mentioned the first female prime minister of Mauritius National Youth Parliament. Talk to me about what that moment meant for you. Did you feel like you hit full circle, or did you feel like you're just getting started?
You know what? It was such a funny experience. And I'm going to tell you, so when I got into the National Youth Parliament, it was for me, so far, everything that I've learned about politics in Mauritius has been from a very academic standpoint. What I read in books, what, I through my research online, but it never had been about talking to the people getting on the ground, right? And so I thought, this would be a great opportunity for me to really go there and see how it all happens, And so going through that whole process, it was just about learning for me. It wasn't never about being prime minister. Actually, I wanted to be in the opposition just because I had so many questions to ask, know. But so when I actually was elected, prime minister. So there were about 6 candidates. So there were me and another woman, and then all the rest of them were men. And so when I got elected, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. All right, bye. I'll see you the next day. And so that evening, after being elected, it went out to like the news in Mauritius that, oh, the National Youth Parliament has a female prime minister, and everybody heard of it. And I was just out having dinner with my parents, and then a friend called me and he's like, do you know that your name is on the front page of this newspaper? I was like, wow. Oh no, what did I do now? I was scared. And my mom was like, okay, you definitely did something wrong, because your name wouldn't just be on the page, right? Yeah. And even before that, I was active on my Instagram, like posting about what the government is doing, what they're not doing, speaking out. And so I thought, oh, shoot, maybe this is what I get caught. Yeah. And then I called my friend again. I was like, please tell me what newspaper is. I need to find it. And then my dad goes and runs all of the stores just to find that paper. Yeah. And then there was my name, like Deepshikha Parmessur, the first female prime minister for the National Youth Parliament. I was like, oh. Okay. So I sat down and I was just taking it all in. And then that night when I got home, someone else called me from the radio and they said they want to air an interview tomorrow morning before it all starts. So could we just do like a quick answer questions thing? And I was like, sure. I don't know what you want me to say, but okay. And then the next day it just took over, and that's when I realized this was a moment that needed to be celebrated, because we've never had something similar before. Yeah. And yes, it wasn't the real government, but it was something to have a young woman as a prime minister, getting that title. It just meant the world to other young women out there who were slightly interested or very interested, but just didn't know if there was a place for them, right? That's when it hit me that we have so much work to do. We're in 2020, and that's when we are celebrating something that has never happened before. A woman as prime minister means that there's so much work to do. So it was really the start of the fight, I think, for me.
So I think while listening to your answer, I think of a quote you once said. This is where I'm going to quote you. You once in one of your interviews with something that really stuck with me, and I feel like fully encapsulated your grit and what this moment meant for you. You mentioned in one of your interviews that do not lose the stamina, because if you lose the stamina, the rooms that need you will forget about you. Which I think I was like, oh my God, she really sounds deep. But I really think that it spoke truth to power. It spoke truth to the challenges that we all face in our all respective trajectories. So here you are hitting, this becoming the first national youth first female national youth prime minister.
It's a mouthful.
And here you are hitting this milestone, and what people don't see before is it's kind of like what happens in the person you have to become to reach that moment. You know what I'm saying? So when I heard that moment, I was like, I definitely want to hear what she was actually running about when she said this quote. This idea of not losing stamina, and how it is important for you to show up in the rooms that are important, that you need your voice.
Yeah, I think really, when I wrote that, I think it was last year around, I think August. It was August of last year. We were dealing with a pandemic, but at the same time, there was an issue that happened on one of our oceans. Wow. On one of our beaches on the south of Mauritius, where there was this big ship that was stuck on the shore and it was leaking oil, and so what happened is, for the government didn't respond for about a week, even though it was happening. Like, people were losing their livelihood because they were fishermen who lived in that area. They couldn't, because fish were dying, like the seafood was dying because of the oil leakage, right? And so you could really see Mauritians, from CEOs to young people rallying around to that area and just making sure that, we're protecting our beaches, we're protecting our sands, right? And then that sort of died down 2 weeks later. And I was there for the whole week that it happened, helping out. But then after that sort of died down for me, I was sad because here we were about 2 weeks before, we were all coming together, we were rallying for that one cause to save our beaches. 2 weeks later, not a single thing was heard on behalf of the people, and especially for like the young people who were actively involved. And I get, we all have our jobs, we all have our lives to get back to, but we must not forget this place that we call home for so many people. And so really when I wrote that, it was also about, I was almost done with doing interviews for the National Youth Parliament, and I was mostly done because I went to India to represent Mauritius, the Mauritius Assembly, and then after all of that had died down, I could really feel that the hopelessness of before. The system is not going to change. So why do we even bother to continue helping? Why do we bother to continue the work that we're doing? And to me, it's, one thing that I realized, especially last year after the village council election, is that we are going against a system that has been here for years, even decades, right? Since independence, we are founded upon a colonialist system. So if we want to change, if we want to fundamentally change that system, it's not going to happen overnight, but we can start somewhere so that the person that comes after us, the generation that comes after us, has it a little bit easier because we started it, right? And so it really is about consistency and patience. And if there's a cause that you care about and you're passionate about, keep going at it. I know personally and mentally it's very challenging when you're trying to do something and you can't see the result or you can't see the impact, the direct impact. But one way or another, you are pushing the needle a little bit further, and that is a big enough job that you're doing. And so for me, it's really about being consistent in the work that you're putting, and especially when it comes to changing the system, really. So it was a dark time back then, but I think just putting it out there really helped me process it. And that sparked conversation with other people as well who felt the same way. And so really it just helped us to connect to the fact that we need to keep going. We can't just stop here,
Mm-hmm. And I think, talking about the system and how oftentimes the rhetoric is that the system's not going to change. And oftentimes, you look at a lot of African states and a lot of how governance, definitely governance across African states, and how to some extent it is not willing to accept the youth voice at the table to some extent, well, with some respective countries, in your journey in both the political and the educational sphere, which underlying problems do you feel like are ignored, right? And that you think that should be spoken about?
I feel like we're doing it wrong, man. We're so, and this is, I can't speak for the continent, but from what I've read and what I've seen, and something that is very prevalent in Mauritius is we are more interested in this whole idea of, the identity of a person than doing politics because of a cause or a need. We're so interested of, especially in Mauritius, I want to join that party because this man is the leader, as opposed to I want to join that party because of the work that they're doing and the causes that they believe in, right? And so I think we're just going about it wrong. And we're also in this mindset. So I think the current government here is in this mindset of doing short-term fixes as opposed to a long-term planning, right? We're so focused on tomorrow or the next day or to the end of their term that they're not thinking beyond that. And I feel like we're wasting away the most underutilized and most important resources that we can have in our respective countries. And that's young people. I mean, no wonder so many young people are leaving the continent. They're leaving their homes to go outside because at the end of the day, they want this job security. They want their safety, right? And their countries are not able to give that. And in that way, we're losing so much talent, so much potential because our country does not care about them. And, we need to find a way to keep our people in. And, I think that can only happen when we have equal representation in positions of power. Because as a young woman, I do not expect a 59-year-old man to understand what I'm going through and what I need in my country. I need someone who looks like me up there, who can advocate for me when I can't.
Yeah.
But we don't have that here.
Yeah.
And we don't feel the need for it because people at the top are so comfortable with what they have and the bubble that they're in, that at the end of the day, they're just doing it for themselves and their own future, as opposed to the future of the country.
Yeah.
I think we've just got it wrong in what it is supposed to mean when you're in power. Yeah. I think it's just, we're here to work for the people. We're here to serve for the people. And so when you're doing things, you don't do things for them. You do things with them, You work with them, you plan with them, you do whatever you need with them, but you just don't put yourself in a pedestal where you can't reach the people at the bottom. So I feel like we're just doing it all wrong right now.
Which really also kind of unpacks how leadership should not be this elite club, that is separated from the people. That ideally, in fact, even in public service, your duty is simply to serve. That if the moment leadership or you being a public, you being in a public service position and making it elite, is that you run the risk of leading with a lot of ignorance, right?
Yeah.
Because there is no equal representation. Because I think also the importance of taking time to understand the different lenses through which the people see their lived experiences. Because I think sometimes you personally, as someone who is from South Africa and has experienced, been in South Africa, it sometimes also feels like you kind of forget what the whole thing was about in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Because you get, and I guess I don't know what it feels like to be in a position like that, but you kind of like forget the core values, the core principles of leadership in any form. You know what I'm saying? That at the end of the day, it is a human-centric job. It is a job that requires you to simply serve. So I think I find your answer quite reflective. I'm thinking about what you say and trying to think about, how as a result of talking to you, my biases or my definition of leadership is being redefined by the way you articulated yours. But, I feel like as we shift to the latter part of this interview, I'm thinking about, I know veganism is a huge part of who you are. And I felt like this interview would not encapsulate entirely who you are if we don't speak a bit about veganism. So I know for sure that you started this enterprise, at the height of COVID. And as someone who doesn't grow up in a vegan community, I haven't tried veganism myself. So this is more of a point of curiosity from my side,
You should try it.
And I think back home there is a culture of I love my meat, So I think I was really quite interested, Deepshikha, about why you think veganism is important. And if so, in what ways could one practically, on a week-to-week basis, start to infuse or start to actually take steps towards, reducing their meat consumption?
Yeah. I think for me, I'm going to speak about the business that I started first. I think for me last year was really when I started reading more about the human impact that we're having on climate change, right? And what are we doing or what are we not doing that is, making it worse for us? And so I came across this fact where it says that, I can't exactly remember the number, but it says that the agricultural sector, so farming, is actually the number one business or sector that is contributing to climate change. And in my head, it didn't make sense. I was like, what does this have to do with animals and cows and climate change, But the more you read about it, it's this idea that the amount of water and the amount of feeds that a farmer has to produce annually can actually help to eradicate hunger if we just divert these resources to feeding the population as opposed to feeding animals, right? And then you get into the scientific research, which I'm not going to go into because I'm not very well versed into that. But if you read about it, our body doesn't actually need these things. We're led to believe that we do, right? And so last year, when I learned about all of that, I knew that I couldn't keep doing what I was doing, knowing that it was hurting the environment and the world, really. And so when I started the business, really, it was from a place of need. In Mauritius, there isn't a big market for vegan food. And even if we have, it's very expensive, which it shouldn't be. Why am I being charged like $20 extra for almond milk when I haven't hurt anyone? In trying to get almond milk, right? It's just almonds. I didn't kill any animals for that, right? So why am I being charged extra? And so it was really about, when I started Vegan Cravings, that's my business, I wanted to, dispel some of the myths that we had about vegan food, that it's a, elite type of diet. It's not a diet. It's just a lifestyle, And the second is that so I started in around July. And we're coming out of a lockdown in Mauritius, and the whole agricultural sector in Mauritius, so the local planters, local farmers, they were facing a crisis where they couldn't sell their products. They couldn't sell their vegetables and fruits, right? So what I did with my business is all of my products, all of my raw goods, so vegetables, fruits, like the basic things, I make it a point to not get them from the big corporations, the big grocery stores. I go out and talk to the local farmers, and I get all of my vegetables and all of my produce with them. And so as a way, I'm also supporting their business, and then I'm making my product and I'm making it accessible and affordable to everyone across the island, right? And I made it a point to not exceed a certain price so that it's affordable to everyone. And I think, I am someone who is not going to be one of those type of vegans who's going to force you or criminalize you almost when you're eating meat in front of me. I believe that everyone should consume what feels good to them, but you should have an informed and conscious mind when you're making that choice. You should be informed about the choices that you're making. And hopefully with all the reading that's out there and all of the things that's out there, that's going to help you make an informed decision about your consumption. And I mean, we're a family of 4, and I'm the only one who's vegan in my family, right? But what I do is I love cooking for people. It just makes me happy. And so I try to make it a point that every week, once or twice, I'll make dinner for the family, and it's an all vegan dinner, right? And that helps them to reduce their meat consumption, but also, helps them to understand that here I am after 2 years of being vegan. I'm still alive. I don't have any protein deficiency. So we're all good people. It's okay to become vegan. You're not going to miss out on anything. So I think it's just this idea that creating a business that's not helping just you, but it's helping people behind you who are doing the grunt work, really, but also, trying to change the mindsets of people and making them become more conscious of what they're putting in the body and what their choices are leading to the positive or the negative impacts in the world around them. So,
Thank you for that. I will definitely, we'll go back to the specific section of the interview and actually listen and take some of the notes. I think one thing I do take away is that the first step is exactly what you're doing with your family. Just reduce the amount of times or the amount of meals in a day. Maybe start with like a meatless Monday and a meatless Friday.
Exactly.
and then, because I think it's also a thing of introducing your mind and your body and your appetite to a new way of living that benefits you on the long term, health wise, just as an individual. I really do agree with that. On that note, what would you say is your message to the world?
I think my message to the world is to keep pushing. In most spaces right now, wherever I look around me, the world is not what it's supposed to be or what it should be. We are trying to get there, but we're doing it wrong. When we're making decisions, when we're doing things, we're only involving a small group of the world. When this is something that I heard a couple of months ago, is when I walk into a room, I want to see the people in that room reflect the real world.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see one type of people, one group of people. I want to see in every room that I walk into, if everyone is represented equally.
Yeah.
Because then when everyone is represented equally, you're able to make decisions for everyone, And so I think for me is we have a long way to go, but I am very hopeful because of young people like you who are pushing the needle, who are trying to engage in important conversation with other people in other communities, that it's going to happen. But we have to be consistent. We have to keep working and, just be your true self, be authentic. Just bring your whole self into every room that you walk into, and there's going to be a space for you, because I truly believe that there is a space for everyone. There isn't a number of finite success. And so if we're able to open up and work more, we're going to create more spaces. And so everyone is going to fit into where they're supposed to be.
Which really speaks true to the idea that of constant sacrifice, right? The idea of understanding that we all have our own goals, and it is that constant pushing. It is as a result of us working as a community. That concept of Ubuntu again coming in here, but that constant thing of kind of, as you are being lifted as an individual, are you sending the lift down? Are you lifting other people, be it in your own close circle or be it in your own ethnic background? That the idea that to achieve that common goal is a common responsibility, but also it's important to, as you said, to push each other, to engage in conversations like these, to document stories of minority groups that are underrepresented, like you're doing with Minority Africa, and all of that shifting of needle. It's kind of like a game of small pushes. It is those small pushes, those attention to details that over time, when we were 50 and we are all grannies with gray hair and all, that we'll look back at this body of work that we have put together in our lifetime, in the time in which we were most active, in which we stood up for a cause that was bigger than ourselves at the time. But as a result of our sacrifice, generations of those following us can not really have it a lot more easier, but there is a sense of progress in terms of where we're going. On that note, how can our listeners and our viewers stay in touch with the work that you're doing?
So you can find me on Instagram at Deepshikha Parmessur. I am very active on Instagram or on Facebook, and I'm open to have any conversations from Grey's Anatomy to politics or anything at all. So just send me a message. I am always open.
Yeah, right. There you have it from Deepshikha, guys. Go read and look about what she's about on her social media pages. We will be sharing some of the links to her social media pages once we do release her episode. Once again, here at the Leaders Podcast, we believe that as more and more young people go conscious of their unique purpose, as they discover their hidden pearl, they essentially add value to society in the only way they can. Please remember to follow us on our Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube at the Leaders Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode and enjoyed listening to Deepshikha's voice, please remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share with at least 3 people who you believe will find this episode valuable. Thank you so much. Asante sana.